Welcome to Your Healing Era, a podcast for artists, creatives, healers, anyone living outside the traditional mold who's searching beyond the conventional forms of healing. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and rate the podcast. Thanks for being here, and let's dive into today's episode. Okay, welcome everyone to another episode. I'm really excited, but also feel already a calm taking over me. We haven't even started. I have Michele Janezic today with me. Michele is a spiritual psychology somatic practitioner. She guides people through emotional alchemy, nervous system repair, and deep soul remembrance. Her work helps highly sensitive, highly self-aware, soulful people break free from perfectionism, overgiving, and patterns that no longer serves them. She weaves together trauma recovery, subconscious programming, somatic healing, and spiritual psychology into a powerful process that transforms grief into gold, longing into liberation, and dreams into reality. She founded Spiritual Alchemy Studio, and we're going to talk about that today. Michele, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing? What's alive for you today or these days?
Well, just what's alive for me these days? Everything's alive for me these days.
That's fair answer.
I think similar to you. I've had some health and autoimmune things that I'm working through and feeling like I'm getting my body back, and just surrendering to the flow of it all and resetting my own nervous system is helping with healing.
Yeah, I can relate. So for those who aren't yet familiar with your work, what do you do and who do you help?
What do I do? At the core of it, it's all about soul retrieval. And I have come to a place on my own healing journey where I recognized that retrieving my own soul was to reclaim my inner kid, and just realizing that it was all one and the same. And so I work with people who are on a soul journey and help them heal trauma and lingering like limited beliefs and scarcity thinking and fears and trauma, and help them work through the weight of these things that have happened to us along the way since we were these pure, innocent kids, and help them just release all this stuff that isn't theirs and help them remember who they really are underneath it all.
That's beautiful. And it totally makes sense with, when I follow you on Instagram and everything you're talking about, reclaiming your inner kid. You always seem to be like frolicking somewhere or have a like very kind of a playful essence, which I really appreciate.
I get that from my dad, who's like an eternal kid at heart. And I am so grateful, because I think I know it is the biggest lesson that I've ever received from him, was to hold on to that spirit in myself. And that's funny that the frolicking, because I think it was like maybe a year ago, I was like, how can I be a professional fairy frolicker? And I've kind of realized that that's exactly what I'm doing now.
What a dream, right?
Totally.
So how did you arrive at this work? Were there personal turning points? Like how this whole blend of skills and what you offer came to be?
Yeah. Well, my own personal soul healing journey really kind of kicked off when I was 17. And ever since, I went to this like weekend retreat that just changed my life. And it was the first time like multiple veils were lifted from my consciousness and started seeing the world differently. Kind of just set me off on okay, like once that curtain lifts, you know that there's more, and so that was the kickoff point. But um, I've always been drawn to expressing myself and working through emotions using my body and dance and movement. And so then a few years later in college, I did my senior thesis on movement therapy. It was called Authentic Movement. And that was such a healing modality to use the body to heal and express yourself if you have difficulty communicating, which I did at that time. And I remember so distinctly, I was I guess I was 20, um, in my senior year of college. And I remember at this workshop, I just had this voice within, and it just said, "You're going to return to this work in your 40s." And it was so distinctive. And I didn't know what that meant, but I've been carrying that ever since. And so I just continued on, it's just working on myself, doing a lot of inner work, but then also just living life and pursuing the career. And I was in the fashion industry since I was like 15. Um, and, and then and then COVID happened. And then I was living in New York. And when the pandemic happened, everything just started to shift. I mean, everything. And my world just started to crumble. And I started to understand and see reality in a new way that I never had seen before, and understand. I felt like it was the first time I was truly introduced to my nervous system. And I was like, oh, hi, there you are. You're fried out right now, just being in the energy of New York, and then how scary it was at that time, and having an autoimmune and being scared of dying because of COVID, and not knowing, all of the, what was going on at that time. And that just felt like a fast track of an awakening journey. And then it's wild now, it's been 5 years, but last fall I had like the crescendo moment of it was like the rebirth of all rebirths. It felt like I refer to it was just like I resurrected myself. And
Wow.
in that moment, I just started laughing. I mean, I howled. I was like, "Oh my God." And it was like, it's me. It's my kid. I reached the place that I've been wanting to get to my whole life since I was a child. And it was just that pure essence of who I am, and not so hard to describe, because it was just like the most profound experience of my life. And it was just this lifting of pain and anything that I had carried my whole life. It was just, I just released it. And it was like, it was just, yeah, it was just overwhelming.
So was it an overnight kind of experience?
I mean, I would say it was like 49 years of, or
Yeah, a culmination of
8 years, 48 at that time, 48 years of work. Or I mean, less than that, because I started really at 17. But although as a child, I deeply remember I had an experience when I was a kid that was like, you're going to get to this place and it's going to take you a long time.
wow.
Yeah.
So it makes me think how there's things we can do to get ourselves to a better place, to the place where we're supposed to be, or if there is a supposed to be, or a place where we're aligned, soul aligned. But also there's a timeline that we cannot really fight, and there are lessons that we just have to learn, and those things take time, and there's not exactly shortcuts. I don't know. Like I remember we hung out in person at the Rockaway Beach.
Yeah,
Was it 2020? You were living right by the beach at that time.
yeah, it was either that year, yeah, probably that summer or maybe the summer after one too, because I was there through almost 22.
Yeah, it could have been 2021 too.
Yeah. So yeah, so then like at the very moment I had this experience, it was like it felt so visceral. It was like the culmination of a lifelong journey all of a sudden happening overnight. And it was like the door closed to my past very gently, but at that same moment I had this like literal doors bursting open of like, and now you know what you're here to do.
Wow, that's almost sounds like a psychedelic journey or something.
Felt it. It was incredibly transcendent. It was, um, yeah, it was incredulous, and so it was like that voice that I had heard when I was in my 20s about, you're going to return to this work. I was like right on time. Wow. Um, and so it was just solidified that, and for me, like I was ready. I was now like now I know the journey. I know how much and work it took. Um, and it's time for me now to I want to be of service and I want to help others get to a place within themselves that they are searching for, whatever that place might be.
Hey, I'm gonna pause for just a minute because I really gotta tell you about this. If you're feeling called to go deeper on this work, and if you're a woman who loves making music or exploring sound, writing songs, and expressing yourself creatively, I'm leading a retreat in Mexico this summer. It's an intimate, immersive week of embodied healing and creative expansion. We'll have a professional recording studio on site. We'll be writing, producing, dancing, practicing yoga, meditating, swimming in the ocean, all the things. So, really living inside our bodies and inside our art. If this is calling you, all the details are below. We have limited spots and we have early bird pricing, so go check it out. And if Mexico isn't happening for you right now, I also have a free nervous system regulation tool that you can explore at home in your own time. And if you're ready for something more structured, my full nervous system sorcery course is also available. Everything is linked below. All right, let's get back to the episode. I have so many things I want to ask you. So, first, the phrase reclamation, not self-improvement. I think I read that somewhere that you wrote that. It's very powerful. So what's that distinction mean to you? Because everyone's all seem to be on a race to self-improve and upgrade and hack.
I mean, yeah, I think that's the thing. There are no hacks to it. There are no shortcuts. It takes so much courage to go through and face one's pain and to face one's shame and to have a really raw, heavy, deep look into the mirror. And
We're
so
just sometimes not ready yet to do.
totally, and it comes in layers too. It's like it doesn't. You can't. If it would happen all at once, it would we would just fry out. You know what I mean? Like it just would be it'd be too much truth all like hitting you in the face. It would be unsustainable. I don't
Like
yeah,
hard to integrate.
totally. And so like I think self-improvement, there's nothing to improve. I think that's like the been like there's just it's been a journey. I would just say like my whole life has just been a journey of plot twists of like, oh my God, you're perfect just as you are. You don't have to change a single thing about you. You just have to accept yourself as, and so there is no self-improvement. It's just there's always things we can work on to be better humans, but the idea that we have to be perfect or it's it's just all about self-acceptance.
It's so huge, right? To accept things, we actually first have to look at what's really there. And a lot of us are spending a lot of time and effort running away from what's really there, and culture that's really easy to distract ourselves all the time and never like be still long enough to be with what is.
Totally. And I think like so much of it too is just self-forgiveness, because when we're operating from the survival mode state, it's like there's like another, it's like so many identities and personalities and conditioning and programming, and there's just so many aspects of self that are not who we are at our core. And it's, we're like the sum total of everything that we've ever lived through and that affected us. And so when we start to lift these veils of like, that's not me, and wait, that's not me either, and oh wait, I did that because I was just trying to survive, and so I had that bad toxic habit of that I'm outgrowing now, and so I am also allowed to release that and let that go too. And yeah, it's just like,
Yeah, so many things we internalize when we're young, like assuming things were our fault, or and then we're not even aware that we move through life with certain patterns that we, of thinking or being, that is really running our lives a lot of times. And so you're talking about self acceptance and self forgiveness. It's huge. What how do we even get there?
day by day, setting, I think like so much of it also is just like surrendering to the experience and just not also putting so much attention and focus on healing, because it's such a process that happens through living and through experience. And it's like every day, every hour, we can do a little bit different. We can take these little tweaks. And the more we learn to trust ourselves and start living in a way that is healthier, it's like identifying what doesn't work is so important and key. And just even like through the work that I'm doing now, I think one of the biggest revelations and under like for me is that we are only conscious of 5% of our thoughts. That's nothing. And so 95% of our thoughts, and I can't remember how many we have, but thousands, tens of thousands a day, 95% of them are subconscious. And the work that I've been doing, and that is universal with every client, is there could be an incident that happens right now, like with a family member or a friend or a coworker, and they start sharing this story, and I'm trained to be able to pick up on certain clues that they say and track, and then be able to take them deeper into a path, like regress into a different part of their lives that also reflected um, these commands that they're saying. And what's been so surprising is like you could have this moment that's happening right now, and then it's like, let's go into an older memory. And okay, let's go there. And then all of a sudden they're 16, and it in an environment and a place that has nothing to do with, nothing perceivingly to do with their current moment.
Mm-hmm.
And could have a complete like, oh my God, that is why I am in like, and so then once you start to see your own patterns and the root of where it came from, then everything can really start to shift, because then you're starting, once you become your own witness to yourself, your level of awareness just expands. And then you can actually then start to break patterns because you can actually see them. and that you
Yeah,
couldn't
it takes
totally unaware of before.
yeah, it takes a lot of awareness, I was gonna say, to be able to do that, to be your own witness. The patterns are fascinating. Every time I have like some kind of a weird entanglement with a person, like a difficult person at work or like whatever, I often try to kind of figure out the source of it, or I see other people's entanglements because I think I define myself as clairsentient. So I can, I'm
Mhm.
sure you are too in a way, and you can really kind of notice what's going on in the room and people's inner battles, and how they come out. And it's just so fascinating sometimes. Anyway, without without getting into too much personal stories, but like talking about um, young life. I read some of your story on your website about how from a young age you were supporting other people and kind of taking on people's trauma and feelings until you realize that it wasn't actually serving people if you were harming yourself. That's something I really, really resonate with. I think I have a similar pattern. So, can we talk a little bit about this? How to make the shift to be in a place where you can be of service and help people, but without harming yourself? That's like a big life quest for me.
Oof. Yeah, same. It took most of my life to get here to even recognize that I was even doing it. And then what's one thing to realize you're doing it, and then another to actually stop stop the pattern. Um, I think yes, like as empaths, we're just these sponges and um, deeply feeling the room, deeply feeling other people's pain, um, and wanting to help and fix and save people. That was just like such a core thing for me since I was a kid. But then over time, I realized it took such a toll on my body and my health and my emotional state. Um, Gosh, I mean, I think like so much of all of this work is recognition. And just like even recognizing our tendencies and being really honest and identifying where in my life am I overextending myself at the expense of my own health and safety.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking people listening to us, they don't even have to be healers or, but I'm sure a lot of people, if not most people, can relate to the notion of, just other people's energy affecting them. And how do we work with, I don't know, maybe boundaries or do you have any self protection rituals you wish to share or anything like that?
I mean, I think honoring and trusting, like, our body keeps score, right? We know this, and our body holds our deepest memories that even though our mind might not remember, our body knows. And so it's like learning to trust our bodies, and like body wisdom is so important. And like those gut instincts and those feelings of discomfort. Um, and just to be able to recognize, like, if, walking into a room, if you're feeling, you just don't feel safe. Um, Knowing that it's okay to leave, knowing it's okay that you don't have to stay, giving ourselves permission to not giving ourselves permission to let people down. It's okay. If if we're suffering, I come from a long line of martyrdom and women who sacrifice themselves to save others and like in honor of the family. And for me, that was such a cycle to break. And it was because I was trained to not do this. I remember having I think I was in my 30s is like when I first started actual like psychotherapy. And I remember a therapist working with me on boundaries, and it was very confronting. It was such a difficult concept for me to even wrap my head around because I had none. I'm I guess just I was just a sponge, and so I the idea of actually saying no to people I loved was so hard. And that was a really difficult time in my journey of, and very thankful I had a guide to do that because I wouldn't have known how to do it alone. And kind of just had the support of someone to help teach me and guide me and to let me know because it felt so wrong to me. Um, Especially, if you've been one way and overgiven your whole life, then to all of a sudden pull back and not give the same is really also confronting to the other person that's used to receiving so much support. And so to kind of cut that off can feel literally like losing a limb.
Hmm. Yeah, I bet that's an intense process. What helped you to be able to do it? Because I'm personally a person that has a easier time saying no and fuck off.
Mhm.
And um but so I'm just curious, like how were you able to like really
Yeah. I'm definitely more of the fuck off mode now. And that took a lot of practice.
like I had to do the opposite because something I just have to say because you mentioned before, you're always free to leave the room. We don't all are can afford to leave a room sometimes, Sometimes it's your workplace that you can't leave or whatever, so we can't always leave. But yeah, but then like your family, sometimes you have tricky family members or tricky dynamics with them and you can't just like get up and leave or you don't want to for whatever reason. And then it's really like those subtle shifts in the way you interact,
Totally.
the way that you stop pleasing and giving in a certain way.
I mean, hmm, I immediately when you were saying these things, I have come to understand and I'm coming to understand how important it is now more than ever and understanding how to work with it more than ever. But back then, I prayed. I just
Hmm.
prayed to the universe and was like, help me with this difficult situation. Help me find peace. I am struggling. Um, it's like when these situations get so bad, they become It kind of, I mean, for me, it was like it feels like it's like lessons will repeat themselves until we learn the lesson. And so I had to learn boundaries in every single aspect of my life, between family and friends and work and relationships and romantic partners. And so it was a lesson for me that just kept hitting me over the head and it just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And when I was living in New York, I mean, it's like I was born and raised in New York. And so I always thought I was going to go back home. And I have come to realize now that I went back home to do this like deepest healing of my life. And it was so insanely and intensely hard. And the lessons they were screaming at me in every aspect of my life. And I
Like
had
showing you all the places that you like still lack boundaries or
myself. Yeah.
the what?
I was abandoning myself.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And so it was like, and it was happening in all areas all around me. And then it only intensified during the pandemic. And so it's like, I know for myself, it literally broke me. I mean, I got to the place of just literally being on my and hands and knees on the floor, just like begging for mercy because it was just had gotten so bad. And then something really amazing happens at that place. It all starts to shift. And it's like so much of it I've recognized too is like the power of intention and the power of surrender and the power of hitting that place of, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing and I don't know how to help myself anymore. And I just am down here on the ground and here's my little like white flag of surrender. And I'm begging for help right now. And that's when, that's when something magical just really happens. Because it almost just starts, it's like that movie Inception where it's like I think of that movie a lot because when you start to then it's like you start to set yourself in a new direction because you're like, this isn't working, I don't want this anymore, but I don't know how to get to this place. It's just that ultimate arms up, I don't know what to do next. That it's like the divine comes in and is like, well, let me help you now. And things just happen then. And people kind of just start to really let you down in a way. It's happened to me, like, and it's happened over and over and over again that they ended up doing things that are so bad that it gives me the ultimate permission to just take a step back and go, that's all on you. And I was able to just quietly walk away without having to do anything.
That's powerful. The power of, you mentioned earlier prayer, but even for people listening who don't necessarily believe in God or um then you talked about it not as prayer but as just intention, stating your intention to the world, to the universe, to yourself, a certain level of surrender. I mean, I can relate to these rock bottom moments where I was like, I thought I was really trying. I thought I was doing the right things, and then just keep getting hit again and again and again to the point where you're just on the ground and you're like, okay, what now? Tell me. You tell me, because I don't know any. I really just don't know anymore what to do right now.
And
I I remember feeling that. A few years ago, my apartment burned down, and it was like the peak of a few years of just so much fuckery and struggle in all areas of my life. And then the apartment burning down like a month after I finally found it and moved in and then got a job and got the apartment, got the things going, really trying to put things in place. And then that happened, and I was like on the street in Brooklyn, like on the ground, just like, just what now? Just I surrender, like your what you say, your little white flag, like, and I think that was like a good transition point to actually being more, I don't know if in surrender, but in more in flow, more in acceptance, more in less in resistance, like more just trying to listen deeply and not push through. I could push through really hard, and I was pushing through really hard for like many years. So
that is
taking the step back.
totally, and that's the irony is like it's like when I was living, like it's like all about living in survival mode. And when we're living in survival mode, we're like a bull in a china shop. It's just like you're just trying so hard, and everything is taking so much effort, and you're just being drained in every which way. And you just are like you're just exhausting yourself emotionally, physically, mentally, financially, all of the things, right? It's like, and when it's like when life is seemingly working against us in all these different ways, it's such a sign that we are not headed in the right direction. We're just trying to force instead of surrender to the actual flow. flow of it. And so I think it's like facing our own polarity and our own breaking point where it's just I can't continue like this anymore. This is not working.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings me back to something you were talking about earlier, which is the body wisdom and and the different tools to kind of align. So so we're giving people some hope. Okay, so what do we do? Someone's listening. They're feeling like they're in a crappy spot. um, so we're talking about nervous system practices, and I know you work with movement and with breath. Um, so there's hope.
I mean, I guess there's so much hope and there is another side, and it is all it's so hard to see, but it truly is it's all a gift, because if it wasn't for the rock bottom as it is, if it isn't for hitting your head on the wall enough times that you go, this is not working, to finally ask for help and to finally put your arms up and realize that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And it's in that moment that that change happens. It's in that moment that flow happens. And I think for myself, it's just like, even just like, if you're feeling even just that tenseness, is just, I'm such a big proponent of just putting on music and just whatever it is you're feeling. If you're feeling angry, if you're feeling sadness, if you're feeling rage, if you're feeling frustration, put on music that reflects that and just get it out in the body. Have it like physically move your body, whether it's just shaking wildly or dancing or just shaking your head or just clenching, whatever the movement is, because it needs to be released through the body to actually be felt and processed and released. And the body physically has so much to do with that too.
Absolutely, because we're in this physical human existence. I remember after like many years ago, I was sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony. And at the end of the ceremony, like, in the middle of the night, we're all sitting in a circle, kind of sharing experience, just a very small group. And I remember like asking the lady who was guiding it, I was like, but why does it have to be so physical? Because I was so nauseous and I was throwing up and, the whole thing. And she was like, because you are in a physical form in this lifetime.
Actually, so this is speaking of Rockaway. I've never done ayahuasca. I've just never had felt drawn to it, but I've done other plant medicine. But I had an experience. It was probably the summer of 21 in Rockaway, and had re I had I had I'm missing the word, but I was re-engaging in the practice of watching sunrises, because I had been living in New York for 7 years and hadn't watched a sunrise, because it was probably not the safest thing to go to a remote location to watch the sunrise, at 5 a.m. in the morning. But living on the beach, suddenly it was totally safe to do. And so there was this period of time where I was watching sunrises, and I was going through so much internal processing at this moment. And I remember this every day was like a different feeling. The sun was just presenting this new shedding of whatever it was up for me. And I remember watching this one sunrise. It's so hard to describe how piercing it was. It was like a sun I had never seen before, and colors I had never seen. It was so dramatic and so intense, and it was like really harsh. I don't know what was happening. I can't remember what was happening cosmically, but I just remember it was just, the energy was so harsh and it was so intense, and I could almost not even look at it. It was like I had to almost look away. And then I had a practice of, and still do, but have a practice of then sitting with what came up for me, journaling on it. Journaling is huge, because to put our thoughts to paper and to help work out what we're doing. That's such a self-healing modality. And as I was writing, all of a sudden I was overcome and I ran to the bathroom and I threw up and just purged and had several moments of purging and was just like, oh, I've never been wiped out from a sunrise. And it's
That's
like
wild.
wild. And a friend said to me a year ago, and I was really kind of having some old autoimmune stuff come up for me and was working through. She told me something that she had heard that was so profound, and it was that the body is the last place to scream.
Mm.
And I thought that was so fascinating and so interesting because it's like we have this emotional self, we have our soul self and our spiritual self, and we have our emotional body and our it's all within this container of our physical vessel. And that as we're literally purging out all of our past and all of this stuff, it's like, of course, it has to come out of the body because it's been stored inside of our body our whole lives. And so, in order to feel this light and love, we have to release the weight of the density that we've also been carrying our whole lives.
Yeah, which means we have to find ways that feel okay enough or safe enough to be in the body. Because I think for a lot of people, it's not even safe. People people have various kinds of addictions in order to not feel emotions, not feel physical sensations. What my question document is like irrelevant anymore. We just went into organically, but if people are listening and they're like, "Wow, this resonates," but how do I even start? What's like a small doable thing or any recommendations you would have for people?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is consistency in some kind of practice that is solely for yourself. So finding quiet, finding that voice within. So, and setting time aside every day to reconnect with yourself. So if that's what, a meditation practice, a prayer practice, if that is journaling, creative journaling, painting, gardening, anything that returns us to our true selves, that brings us our own peace, and reminding that like deep remembrance of that we can be and that we are our own source of peace. And how do we find that peace? Is it a drive, taking a drive? Like, where can we find that silence? Is it in the bath? Is it um, sitting, on the beach, which is so cleansing to be near
Mm,
a body of water? But I think spending time in nature, just anything that brings us back to ourselves, is first and foremost, and to do that every day. And
on a
it's
regular basis is what is so important. Yeah. Even if it's like a little bit, even if it's like starting with a 10 minutes, right?
totally 10 minutes, 10 minutes with yourself in quiet, like no noise, no music, no social media, no phone, no people, just return to yourself and return to your center is first and foremost, because it's like you get to re-meet yourself. You're like, oh, hi, there you are. And it's like over time that compounds like everything else. And so over time, you want to spend more and more time with yourself and in that space, because you're like, this feels good. But it can feel really uncomfortable at first. So I would say like it's not a, in order to really make something last and to have that consistency and discipline, it's starting, so I think it could just be starting so small.
Yeah. doesn't have to be like a 5 a.m., 3 hour, like,
It's like that setting New Year's and, resolutions, which don't work, right? It's just you're going too big, too fast, and it's just you're burning out before you even start. So it's like having just the simplest practice, even if it's just when you wake up in the morning, just laying in bed and seeing if you can recall a dream, you know, and just pausing and taking some deep breaths before you even get up, and just like, I'm going to start my setting an intention for yourself. Like, today's going to be an amazing day. That could be it, and then you start your day. But like, it's just, I think how you start your day is also so important, so that I kind of return to that. But whether it's just even in the evening, but just having something, doing it every day, because everything outside of us is trying to pull us away from ourselves more and more and more. And I feel like it's such a call. I feel like we're in a crisis call right now, that it's so important to return to our soul.
Absolutely. So I'll ask you one last question before I ask you how to find you and if you want to share anything with people. Just before that, what is the soul?
Mm.
I mean, that could be a whole opening for a series of discussions, obviously, and I love to philosophize. But if you just want to briefly give us your own take of what is the soul?
Yeah. I think I mentioned it from the start, but I mean, for myself, I've just come to find it's who we are underneath everything that we think we are.
That's great. Who we are underneath everything we think we are. I love that. That is actually quite perfect definition. Michele, thanks so much for coming on. If people want to find you, they want to find Spiritual Alchemy, anything you want to share and let people know, I will also make sure to link below.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. Yeah, you can spiritualalchemystudio.com. And then it's the same studio, Alchemy Studio, on Instagram and on Facebook, and then my own personal Instagram as well.
Great. I will link everything below. Michele, thank you so much for coming on, sharing.
Thank you, Noga. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If this episode resonated, send it to a friend, share it in your stories, or take a moment to rate the podcast and subscribe. It genuinely helps this little baby podcast grow organically and reach to the people that it needs to reach. I really appreciate every comment and every review. And as always, if you want to go deeper, my course, retreat, and free resources are all linked below. This is your healing era. Take care, and I'll see you next time.